This video is sponsored by Magic Spoon, more on them in a bit. In this video I'll be redesigning my version of the Hogwarts Express to not only make it a more accurate train than its UCS counterpart, but also incorporate its features, minifigures and motorise it. Not only that, it will go on regular LEGO tracks so all you city fans can build this train as well. Speaking of which, I'll provide instructions on my website, tommycbricks.com, so you guys can build this as well. Now if you didn't see, I bought the new Hogwarts Express, and it wasn't what everybody was asking for, but aside from that, I think it's a pretty cool set. And you should definitely check out my video discussing it after this video if you want to find out my full opinion on it, because the reasons may surprise you. And although yes, I do have a mods video planned for that train as well, one modification I think a lot of people wanted to see was me motorise the train. Now although I'd love to do that, I don't think it's practical as this doesn't have any rails to go on. So when this train was announced, I began working on a Mark II version of my train. Now the parameters for this new train were fairly simple. First off, I wanted to redesign the train. This previous train was designed over 2 years ago. Not only are there multiple pieces that are brand new to LEGO's arsenal, I've also been building for now 2 years. I'm much more experienced when it comes to model making and understand what pieces are used well, what techniques classify as illegal, what pieces may be more expensive via bricklink, and the main one, part efficiency. This model, as much as I like it, just really isn't efficient whatsoever. This means a major redesign just has to happen. And obviously this model was never intended to be motorized, whereas this new one will be. I made that previous model purely for display, but I wanted it to fit on LEGO's rails. Now I want to do what LEGO didn't do with their $500 set and make a UCS styled Hogwarts Express, but in a 6-wide city scale, so it fits in with all of your LEGO City current trains, but still tries to implement some of the detail that we got from the UCS Hogwarts Express. But while I get on with that, here's a word from our sponsor.
So I'm getting really worried about Miles lately. All he's doing is eating this cereal called Magic Spoon.
Now cereal used to be the best, but I stopped eating it when I realised how much sugar was in it all. But I hear Magic Spoon cereal reinvents that, using 0 grams of sugar, 13 to 14 grams of protein, and 4 to 5 net grams of carbs. This just means it's a better for you cereal in almost every way. They're also grain, gluten and soy free, and as I'm trying to cut down on sugar, I want some of this cereal.
So tonight, I'm gonna try and steal some off him. Miles? Miles? No!
If you want to try Magic Spoon for yourself, head to the link in the description below and grab a variety pack today. Just make sure to go to magicspoon.com/TommyC or use promo code TommyC for $5 off of any order. And the best part is Magic Spoon have a money back guarantee, so if you're not happy with your order for any reason, they'll give you your money back, no questions asked. Remember, that's code TommyC. Let's get back to the video. And now that all the designing is done, I think we should take a look at the model. The main thing I wanted to do with this was redesign the model from the ground up. Now obviously this model does look very similar to my previous one, but if I'm totally honest, this is a completely different model. Different sets of techniques, using a multitude of LEGO's brand new pieces that have come out in the last couple of years. Now if I'm honest and you had this model previously, you can probably use a lot of the parts you had from your previous train to update this into the new one. But when you've uploaded the part list to Bricklink, I would suggest just destroying your set and going through the pieces of the previous train just to see if you can salvage what you can, as you will definitely have to make a new order. But one of the main priorities I wanted with this particular train is the fact that it would be motorized. Now if I'm honest, you'll see what we're doing about motorization later, but first I want to go through some of the details on this train, as the accuracy is so much better than my previous one. For starters, I've made the proportions way better, making it longer by 2 studs, and although you may think 2 studs doesn't do much, trust me it does. And one thing you'll immediately notice when you look at the front of my train is that I've not used the printed dish on the front. Now this is totally optional, and this is something I wanted to do for my newer train. With this set, I really wanted to think about the future, and what parts might be harder or more expensive to buy. And as the Hogwarts Express playset is retiring at the end of this year, I wanted to make sure people who don't have that dish piece can have an alternative build that still looks just as good. Now this model actually has 3 versions of the front dish piece, 2 of which are brick built, 1 of which is the printed dish. But it's like I say, if you don't particularly like the way that this one looks on the front, it's easy enough to just take the front off and switch it with something else. Moving up the train, you can see we've used a similar technique on the boiler to my previous model, and still keeps the similar mechanism of just being able to take this piece off so you can get to the footboard and clean it if you get dust under there. You can see now there's a few more details represented on the front as well as underneath the boiler, but moving up the train you can now see we've got some extra details up the side of the train, and coming up to the cab, this is one thing I'm super proud of. The detail on the inside is actually actually accurate to what an Alton Hall would actually look like, and not only that, a minifigure can fit inside at this time, because that's one thing that couldn't happen on my older model. Meaning if you really wanted to spend the extra money, you can buy one of those train conductors from the £500 UCS Hogwarts Express, and throw him in there to make him look like he's driving the train. The number plates on the side of the train are now more accurate, and gives you a decent place to put the sticker if you were thinking about using a sticker sheet on this model. Oh, by the way, for those of you who do buy this, I've put these pieces as pearl ingots, just because I think they look nicer, but if you want to put the sticker on, they have to be tiles. Not only that, the details move over to the tender, and one thing you'll immediately notice is that mine is empty. This gives you the option to either put a battery pack if you were thinking of lighting this up, or you can do my favourite thing with LEGO built steam engines, and fill it with 1x1 black plates to act as coal. Other than that, the details remain pretty much the same, although I have changed the wheel configuration underneath the tender, so when this is running on a piece of track, the middle wheel pivots to make sure that this doesn't derail. And for those of you who thinks this looks a bit flimsy, don't worry, I've tested this loads, and I've not had a single derail. Another improvement is I've thought about where you're putting the stickers, so instead of sticking across multiple bricks, with this new model, if you wanted to add stickers, you'll only ever be placing a sticker onto the one brick. But the biggest difference that you probably will notice immediately is that I've changed the funnel piece to make this a legal one than a very questionable one, meaning this model is not only stronger, but it's so much more stable. And speaking of stable, the best way to make this run efficiently is to use LEGO's standard buffer beam. I know I said I was against it in my very first video, but if I'm honest, it's just the best piece to use to get this to run as efficiently as possible on a layout. And it fixes that horrible chain issue that I had in my previous model, as now the engine, tender, and carriage just click together and makes it super easy for running this on a proper layout, especially the way that we've used to motorize the train. Speaking of which, let's talk about that. So one thing I've never really made a video on, but I've always had on the website, is my carriage. Not only has this train been redesigned, but this entire carriage has as well. And a lot of the reason I wanted to do that was because I want to power this carriage and have the carriage push the train so we don't lose out on any of the detail. Not only that, but I wanted to incorporate some features that we see on the UCS train into this carriage as well. You'll see here if I take off the side of the carriage that I can put in my minifigures for display. Now granted, it's not going to be as many minifigures as the UCS one, but two characters sitting opposite each other can fit in here no problem. Additionally, you can take off part of the roof, as there's some room in there for a trolley witch if you did want to put her in there as well. Like I say, very similar features to the UCS Hogwarts Express, just trying to do it in a smaller build. Now unfortunately there's no sliding doors or anything, there's no way of doing that on this kind of a model, but if we take the back of the carriage off here, you can see that this is the perfect place to put one of the powered up battery boxes. And those of you who are keen observers would notice I used a train motor. It does mean the back wheels and the front wheels look slightly different, but honestly no one will notice when it's on a layout. And if you were thinking about making two of these carriages, this can easily be swapped out for another one of the bogies that are on the front of this carriage. Just make sure you're tweaking your part list accordingly. And without further ado, I'm sure you want to see this thing running. Now unfortunately I don't have enough room in my office, but I do have room for a little tiny layout downstairs, so you'll have to forgive my lighting, but this is what it looks like. Now having this thing running for a few moments here, I've noticed that the train does do a very good job at going around this circuit. Not only that, I've tested it on multiple different pieces of track, through the corners, over points and flexi track. It goes over everything I've tested fine, even running this thing at max speed, which frankly looks ridiculous, doesn't cause any sort of derail. Probably thanks to that new bogie section on the front of the train that was specifically designed to help it go around these types of rails. The weight also probably does help, as it's a pretty heavy train, so if you were thinking about being a bit crazy and going for 3 or 4 carriages here, I think you'd have to use 2 train motors, just so it can keep up. But I think with 1 motor, you can easily do 2 carriages. Just remember that if you want to see more of this, you can go over to my website, TommyCbricks.com, and purchase the instructions over there. Now to make this easy, I've made it so you can buy the instructions separately, but if you were thinking about buying both, I've got a bundle up there as well. And for the first 50 of you to use TCB10, you can get 10% off the order as well. Just remember when you're in the description to check out today's sponsor, Magic Spoon, and use code TommyC to get $5 off your order. And if you do me a massive favor, click the video on screen now. It's my discussion video about the Hogwarts Express, and it's one of the best videos I've ever made, but for some strange reason YouTube's killed it. So if you're interested in LEGO trains, I highly recommend looking at that video too. Thanks so much for watching, I'll see you in the next one.